Okay, we are learning Daf Lamed Gimel Lag B'Sukkah. You ready?
Right.
Here we go. Today's Geshmak Sugya. We're going to talk about Dichoy. Is that how we start? We start right away with that. All right, glad I left off one little Gemara and I forgot to learn it again last night, so we'll have to learn it together. Tan Rabbanan. 2 lines before the 2 dots on the top of the Lamed Gimel. Tan Rabbanan. Yavshu Raiv Olav. If most of the leaves dried out, V'nisharu bay shleisha badei alin lachin, and you're left with 3 badei. I guess that means 3 rings, 3 levels of moist leaves. Kosher. It needs to be at the top of each one. Now let's just take a look at Rashi to see what it means. 3 lines down in Rashi in the top in the wide line. Shleisha badei alin lachin. You got it there, top of the page, Rashi? Shleisha badin al lachin. Shleisha badin, 3 circles. B'chol bad v'bad, shleisha olin, lachin. The bebatzim mishleisha olin lehavi avos. So, no, I got that wrong. Bad, each stick is called a bad, I think. You need 3 aravet, 3 adasim. So that's shleisha badin, and on each stick, shleisha olin, you have 3 leaves that are still moist. Because if you don't have 3, then it's not going to be considered avos. It's not going to be mashulish. It should be on the top of a be'emtsam le'av hadarhu. That would be considered hadar. So that means all you need to have, even if it was nishu raiv olav, if on the top of each of your hadassim you have 1 mishulish on the top, 1 mishulish a set of leaves, then that would be kosher.
Even if it's just a plain stick.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Okay, it's like the Marvaita. Nikdam Rashi, we said if the top was chopped off, so that is puzzle. Correct? Yeah. Okay. So Tani Ula Bar Chinina. Niktam Raishai Va'olsa by Tamra Kasha. If the top got chopped off, but a little berry grew in its place, that's okay. So because it's not, the problem with the top chopped off is that it's not hadar, and therefore if you have something in its place, then it looks okay. That's what Rashi learns. It's interesting. I would have thought it's chaser. Is that, am I reading it right? Kim and Tamar again? No, I'm not sure if that's right. But l'chayra, here you have the issue is that you're missing the top leaf, or the top is broken off, and a little berry grows on the top. So that's that's the tamra. Now that's okay. So now the ksha is going like this. By Rabbi Yirmiyah. Rabbi Yirmiyah asked the following question: Niktam Roisha me erev Yom Tif, also by tomorrow be Yom Tif mahu. What happens if it was this hadas was puzzle on erev Yom Tif and became kosher on Yom Tif? Okay, so what's the din? So what's the shaila? The shaila is a concept called dichoy. Yesh dichoy etzel mitzvahs oiloi. Is there dichoy when it comes to mitzvahs or not? What is this idea? So let's talk about by karbanos first, and it's time. There are 2 parts to this halacha. Let's talk about a carbon first. If you bring a carbon, let's say we have, on Yom Kippur, you got to bring 2 seirim, and they're dependent on each other. You have the seir lazazal and the seir lashem. So let's say after you shecht the seir lashem, the seir lazazal dies. Okay, so now what do you want to do? So you have the blood that you're ready to sprinkle from the seir lashem, but you can't sprinkle it because there was something that it depends on that died. So now this was it was pushed away from being able to do the mitzvah with it. Can't do it anymore, right? And now you want to go get another seer, so you bring another goat. So that's a shell. That's yesh dichoy etzel karbanis. If a carbon was pushed off and wasn't allowed to be brought, can you revitalize? Can you revive it? And can it come back? That's called dichoy by karbanis. So the halach is that there is dichoy by karbanis. That means once a carbon is pushed off, it's gone. won't come back.
Or dichoy meaning you can't bring
You
it
pushed
back.
it off. Yesh dichoy means
Yesh
that you
dichoy
pushed
means
it
you
away. You
can't
can't
bring
get
it
it back. Okay. The question is, do we say the same thing when it comes to mitzvahs? Is there dichoy eitzel mitzvahs? That's the question. Meaning, if I had something that was right for a mitzvah, and then it got pushed off, where's the one right there? If you want to use an old one. See the old set over here? This stuff. 1, 2, 3, 4. If you have a mitzvah, something that was right to be used for a mitzvah, and then something happened that became puzzle, can you revitalize it? Can I bring it back into the game? That's the question by our hadas. Now there are two types of dichoy. One is called the dichoy me'ikara. That means it was never good, and then it became kosher. That's called dichoy me'ikara. It was originally pushed away, and now it became kosher. That's one type of dichoy. The second type of dichoy is something that was good, and then it became puzzle, and now you want to know, can it become good again? Okay, the Gemara, you will see on Amud Beis, the Gemara assumes that the second is worse. Something was never good, and now for the first time in Yantiv it became kosher. Okay, maybe that can work. But if something was good, and then it was pushed away, and it says you can't use it. So now to bring it back is harder to bring it back. Right? Those are the two types of dichoy, which the sugya now is going to discuss. This is the sugya. Is this clear? You with me?
Yeah.
This is the sugya that we're dealing with. The rest of the page is going to be talking about this. We got to get this clear. This is dichoy by mitzvahs. Okay, by kabbalah is dichoy once something's pushed off. It's pushed off. The shayla is, do we apply the same rule by mitzvahs? Most of the Rishonim learn that this is only a din derabanan because the mahalach we don't learn chulin from kachim. So if it's a din by kachim, we can assume it doesn't apply to midiyaraisa. It's like we can't learn it out to apply by mitzvahs. But the Masifta brought somebody says that it's a din deraisa. The nafkamina is going to be. We'll see that there's a takeover over here. So you have to know if we're going to go lachomer or lakula. Okay, let's see this.
The hadassim that are originally puzzle and then over yantif become
Kosher.
Kosher. Is that a dichoy meikara?
Excellent question. The l'chayra, yes, you're right. And l'chayra, the only time it's going to be a dichoy that'll be. I mean, if it was never good and it only became good on Yom Tov l'chayra, that's dichoy meikar because it was never right to do the mitzvah with.
It'd be born like that off the branch.
No, because we don't really care about it until Pesach, until Sukkot comes. Its status before Sukkot is irrelevant. When Sukkot comes, it was a kosher night. If it wasn't kosher, so that would be dichoy meikara. Excellent point. And it's only can be considered that it was kosher nira and then dachu nitcha and then chayzer v'nira is when it was kosher on yantiv and then it became puzzle and now and then it became kosher again. Yes. Okay. Let's see the Gemara. So again, this is Rabbi Yirmiyah's shayla. Yesh dichoy eitzel mitzvahs oy loy. So it says the Gemara v'tish lamiha. Let's learn it out from the following Mishnah. And this is a Mishnah referring to Kisui Hadam. There's a mitzvah. If you shech a chaya or an oif, you have to cover the blood of the animal. That's called Kisui Hadam. So it says the Mishnah, Kiso, if you covered it, vinisgala, and then it got uncovered, you covered it with dirt, and then it got uncovered, pater milachasis, you don't have to recover it. Kiso haruach, but if the wind blew some dirt over it, then chayiv lachasis, you are still obligated to cover it. The only time that was taught that you have a chiv to cover it, that's elish chazav in his gala. That's only if it got uncovered. So the wind covered it over, then the wind blew the other way and uncovered it. Okay, now so you got to cover it. Chazav in his gala, but if it never got uncovered again, then patur melachas says, then you do not need to cover it.
So the din is not on the gavra, so to speak.
Correct.
If it happens, it happens.
Right.
The mitzvah is taken care of.
Right.
You shechted a
chicken,
and then you pour the blood on the ground, and a wind comes and covers it with dirt. You're finished.
As long as it stays covered.
As long as it stays covered. Yeah.
But if it gets uncovered, then you'd have to cover it. Correct. When it gets uncovered, why should you be obligated to cover it? Once this was pushed off, it should remain pushed off. Once the mitzvah was pushed off,
the mitzvah was done.
The mitzvah was done. That means you can't do it. Well, it got pushed off. It means I'm not able to do it anymore. I don't have the ability. So that sounds not like what you were saying. Meaning maybe the mitzvah is on me, but I can't do it now because it's already covered. So once I was exempted from the mitzvah, so now it's pushed. The mitzvah's done. I'm finished with it already. It won't come back on. Okay. So says the Gemara, V'amar Papa, Zoyse Meres. Oh, from here you have a raya. Ein dichoy el eitzel mitzvahs. You see here that you don't push off mitzvahs. That means if a mitzvah was you didn't have the ability to do it, then it gave you reinvented the ability to do it. You have a chiyuv to do it. So the Gemara says, "There are Papa Gufami by a lay." Okay, Rav Yirmiyah wants to know, Rav Papa, how'd you know that? Meaning this din of the Mishnah, or had the who had the Mishnah know that? Says the Gemara, Mifshet Pashatle, the Ein Dichi El Eitzel Mitzvahs, Loishna Lakula, but Loishna Lachumra. Now, when the Gemara says this, is this Pashat that we're going to say this halacha? When Rav Papa said this, meaning Rav Papa said, Rav Papa go for me, I have my Rabbi Yirmiyah had a question even on Rav Papa. When Rav Papa said that Ein Dichi El Eitzel Mitzvahs, did he mean it as a din? He knew that for sure. Mifshat Pashalei, it was Pashadim that Ein Dichi El Mitzvahs Loishna Lakul Loishna L'Chumra. It doesn't make a difference if you're going Lakul L'Chumra. This is a halacha, or maybe Aydilma Sugi Misavkali. Maybe Rav Papa was just Mesupik. He was in doubt. He wasn't sure what the halacha was, and therefore L'Chumra Aminan Lakul Aminan, and therefore he would only say the din L'Chumra but not Lakula. Meaning, when it comes to Kisi Adam requiring you to do Kisi Adam, would be saying Ein Dichoy Eitzel Mitzvahs L'Chumra. Ein Dichoy, we're going to say we're going to be mechayiv to do Kisi Adam. But in our case, where the Hadas was puzzled and then became kosher, if you want to say Ein Dichoy Eitzel Mitzvahs, and you're saying now it can become kosher again, you're saying that halacha L'Kula, because we're going to kosher the Hadas. So that's using this principle L'Kula. So Rav Yirmiyah was still unsure of whether Rav Papa was saying this as a vadayis. Yes, the rule is Ein Dichoy Eitzel Mitzvahs, or was he only saying it L'Chumra, but L'Kula you wouldn't be able to be Saimach on it, and therefore you wouldn't be able to machshir the Hadas. Says the Gemara Teku. Leave it as a teku. Now, Leima Kitanai. Maybe this is Machlekes Tanai. Over Velaktan, the Mishnah said that if you had a lot of berries on your hadasim, if you're memayit them, then they'll be kosher. But you shouldn't be memayit them on Yom Tov. So the Gemara says, over Velaktan, I guess it's a brisa. I thought we had it already. Over Velaktan, if you went ahead and you plucked them off, so then, that's what we more later. Halaktan, if you went and plucked them off, then puzzle. Divi Rebbe Lazar, Rebbe Tzadok. The Chachamim machshir. So if machlekes Chacham, Rebbe Lazar, if you were over and you took off the berries on Yom Tov to make your hadas kosher, is that going to be okay? So
on Yom Tov we said it shouldn't. The Mishnah said not to do
right,
it.
Avar, you transgressed it. You did it. You went against the rule, and you did it. So now you want to know: can you use this hadas? Is a kosher apostle? So, Savrua. There are many factors involved here. So you got a held cup here. There are three factors involved here. Says the Gemara. First of all, let's assume for a moment. Savrua the kuli amalul of ein sarach eged. Let's assume that you don't need to be ma'agid lulav. You don't have to bind the lulav together. If you needed to bind the lulav together, then there'd be another issue that you bound a puzzle hadas. So now the hadas will be puzzle, and now there will be an issue of tasav loiminasi. So assuming you don't need it, so we don't have to worry about that. And even if you hold, and even if you're going to say that there is, even if you're going to say that there is you do need to tie it. You do need to bind it, but la yalfin on lulav misaka. We're not going to learn lulav from sukkah dechseb beitasel minasei, and therefore there's no psul of tasel minasei when it comes to a lulav. So let's assume those two things. Either there's no other issue here. That's what we're trying to set up. There's no other in this. Their machlekes is not dependent on tasel minasei, and it's not about tzarech eged or not. We're assuming you don't need to tie it, or even if you do, there's no problem of tasel minasei. Okay. So now my lab. So what is the machlokes? If these two things, if that's what we're taking for granted, so what's the machlokes? The man, the puzzle, savar, the one who says it's puzzle is because since this originally was puzzle, it remains puzzle. The other one, the Chacham are going to hold, no, just because this thing was pushed off doesn't mean it has to remain not usable for a mitzvah. And since now you took off the berries, and now it's kosher. So that's what we were. The Gemara offered. Maybe it's machlekes tanaim. This machlekes of Arav V'licht and kosher apostle is machlekes of yesh dichayetz mitzvahs or ein dichayetz mitzvahs. Gemara says it's not a good raya. Lie. It could the kuliyam learn yesh dichayetz mitzvahs. It's very possible that nobody says that there's dichayetz mitzvahs. V'hacha b'meilav lulav misukah. Come up. The machlekes is, do I learn that lulav from sukkah? Mar savar yalfin and lulav misukah. Mar savar layalfin and lulav misukah. Maybe the machlekes is, can you learn lulav from sukkah? Meaning, is there a din of tasal mina asoi by lulav? There is a din of tasal mina asoi by sukkah because that's where it says you should make your sukkah. But the lulav doesn't have that din. So who says, do you learn lulav from sukkah? Alternatively, if you were to hold that you do need to bind up your lulav, and everybody holds that you would learn lulav from sukkah, the machlekes would be the machlekes is whether you need to bind up the lulav in the first place. Meaning, if you hold that you need to bind it, you would also hold that there's a psulav tassel v'lemin asli. The only question is, do you need to bind it? If I need to bind it, then this thing will be possible because of tassel v'lemin asli. If you don't need to bind it, so then there's no psulav, then there's no issue because now you're picking it up and you have a kosher hadas, so there's no issues. So where do we find the machlekes of lulav tzarech eged? So it's a machlekes of these tanaim the Tanya that we learned this brisa already. We learned this brisa. The Tanya lulav tzar bein agud bein she'enei agud, whether it's tied up or not, kosher. It'll be kosher. Yehudaimer agud kosher she'enei agud puzzle. If it's tied up, it's kosher. If it's not tied up, it's puzzle. So it's machlekes Chacham and Rabbi Yehuda. My time is Rabbi Yehuda. Why does Rabbi Yehuda say you have to bind up your lulav? Because he says he says you make exer shava from here to agudas eisav. It says lakachtam, and it says over there just like over there when he says that you're taking it, you need to be taking a bundle. It's got to be bound together. Afghan aguda, when you're taking it, it's got to be taking something that's bound together. Rabbanan less and they don't make such a drasha. Now the Gemara has an issue.
What, they don't have the Gezerah Shava?
Correct.
They don't have the Gezerah Shava.
They don't have that Gezerah Shava.
They don't have to prove it otherwise.
Right.
They just say we don't have that. We don't hold that Gezerah Shava.
Correct. Now we have a brisa though. Man Tanel hold the Tan Rabbanan. We have a brisa that seems to go like neither of these. The Tan Rabbanan and the brisa lulav mitzvah agdai is a mitzvah to bind your lulav. Dimlay agdai, but if you didn't, it's kosher. So I was like, money. Who is this? You Rabbi Yehuda. If it's Rabbi Yehuda kilei agdai my kosher. If you didn't tie it, why in the world should it be kosher? He has a Gezerah Shava that tells you got to bind it. And here Rabbanan, my mitzvah covered. What kind of mitzvah are you doing by binding it? They say you don't need to bind it. So Mar says, there's a different mitzvah. There's a mitzvah of hidur mitzvah to make your mitzvahs look very nice. And then period. Now it's interesting. The Rif over here brings the Gemara in Bava Kama of the sugya of hidur mitzvah, of how much you have to spend on hidur mitzvah. I'm right here. He brings it. I was trying to figure out why was he doing this? Because this is where we bring in the halacha that there's a din of hidur mitzvah. Zakelev anveyu is a mitzvah, is a din of hidur mitzvah. So this brings the Gemara in Bava Kama that discusses how much do you spend on hidur mitzvah.
Yeah, but the Rabbanan don't hold it has to be good.
Right, but they hold that it's a mitzvah la'igdai. There is a mitzvah to bind it, it's just not ma'akev. And the question is, so why is there a mitzvah? They don't have lakicha, so what kind of mitzvah is it?
Yes,
the Teretz says because it's a mitzvah of zakelev anveyu. It's a hidur mitzvah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Sagt the Gemara weiter, I show you another merubin. If there are lots of berries, so we said that's possible. There's something that Rabbeinu Hagadol, who is Rav, he said something, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu should help him out. He said the following: the only time you have a problem with lots of berries is if it's in one place on the Hadassim. If it's in 2 or 3 places, then it'll be okay. It'll be kosher.
A lot in 2 or 3 places, or just one here, one there, one there,
A
one
lot.
there?
It has to still be right, I think. What the Mishnah said. Another merubos me'olav. It has to be more berries than
Leaves.
leaves.
Uh-huh.
So if it's in one place, if all the berries are clustered together, you count the leaves. I don't know, you have 100 leaves and you have 102 berries. So it's possible. But he's saying that if it would be in 2 or 3 spots, then it would be kosher. The berries would, even though you have that many, but if it's in more spots, it wouldn't be in one area, it would be kosher. And on that, the Gemara is like, Amar Rava. I think, right? He doesn't like that. He says, Shnaim u'shloshim akaymais. That makes things much worse. Havim enumer. Now it looks like a leopard. It's spotted. That's not hadar. Says the Gemara. Havim enumer puzzle. So that becomes spotted, and it's puzzle. Ella says the Gemara. Yitmar hachi yitmar. Oh, so there's a different way to read that. This is not. That's not what Rabbeinu Gadol meant, and he actually meant to follow. I show you another merubin. If you have a lot of berries, and more berries than leaves, puzzle. And on that, Amr Chizah Davar Zev Rabbeinu Gadol Amrei v'Hamakam Yeh Ba'Izrei Lo Yishanu Ela Anavav Shechayros. That's only if the berries are black. Aval Anavav Yiraikais. But if they are Yaruk, we'll say green. Then yellow. It could be yellow, green, orange. Aval Anavav Yiraikais. Then Mine the Hadasu. So then they're just part of the Hadas.
Not berries.
They're not, it's not an issue of it doesn't look bad.
It blends in.
It blends. Right? Rashi says, Mini the Hadas Ninu, third Rashi on the page. Shemarei and Shavaloi, in your manumar. Then it looks the same.
Even if the green berries are like speckled around and not
Correct.
all concentrated.
Correct. So he says, Amar Papa adds, he says, Adumais kishchayres. Red berries would be like black ones. I mean, they'd be similar. Red would also be no good. Why? I'm sorry?
The number, like a leopard, huh?
What do you mean? If it's red?
He said that green's okay, but
Yeah.
So it looks like pimples.
So he says the Amr of Chanina, they don't say the Amr of Chanina, Hi Dam, this is a din in Hachas Nida, that Dam Shachar is really a Dam Shachar, the Chamesha Damim that are Tamei Midiraisa by a Nida, and the Gemara enumerates them. And then it says the black is also no good. Why is black no good? So Chanina says, Hi Dam Shachar, Adamu Ela Shalaka. It's really red, it's just got something happened to it and it got worse, so now it looks black. So he's saying that red, red is on its way to black. The black leaves, the black berries are really just the black berries are really red berries that went bad. Okay. Zok the Gemara weiter. Im miatan kasher. So if you took off the berries, it'll be kasher. The ma'atinu emas. When did you do this? If you did this before you tied your lulav some pshita, why shouldn't it be kosher? I mean, you took a kosher lulav and you put it into your berries, a kosher hadas, and you put it into your lulav. What's the issue? Why? What's the chiddush? So now, what do you want to say? What happened is that you did it afterwards. So then, dichui me'ikarahu. Well, then, what's the scenario here? This thing was puzzle. And it was always puzzle because it had more berries. It came into Yom Tov and this thing was puzzle. And then I don't know if it's Yom Tov yet. And then you tied it up, and now you took off the berry. So this is dichui meikara because it was never good, right? And now you're kashering it. So tifshlat minei dichui meikara lehavi dichui. So we could be paishish from here. We can answer. We can at least learn from here that dichui meikara is not considered dichui, and that would be okay. So Gemara says, it could be that it is after you tied it on. But this shita may hold that eged is just a designation. It doesn't actually create doesn't create what we call a hishana. Didn't make your lulav set. It just designated this is what you're going to use, and therefore. And hazmana is meaningless. Let's take a look at the Rashi. Rashi explains it. And the Rashi is about halfway down. Ein agudase kriyas shame. But halfway down in the Rashis,
Oh, Eged Habaz.
L'oilam basa da agde v'kasara eged's hazmana ba'almahu.
Yeah. Okay.
Ein agudasei, tying it together is not considered a kriya shame. I'm not calling this something. Liyischala love shem lulav, that it should be that all the dinam of lulav should apply to it, and that ein love shem lulav puzzle. That now I'm going to call this. Oh, you have a puzzle set of a puzzle lulav set litches to push it off in the mitzvah. No, the tying doesn't do that. See, this is all talking about Erev Yom Tif. Because again, we're going to see in a moment that eged, if you hold, you have to tie it. You have to tie it in a way that you can't tie it on Yom Tif. Tying means you have to make a knot. You can't make knots on Yom Tif. So the eged was done before Yom Tif. But if you're tying it for, and this eged is making this into your lulav, so there was a tzad to say that now once I tie it, this is considered my lulav set, and therefore if it's puzzle, it's considered a puzzle. And the Gemara is answering, no, that's not the case. The Gemara is saying it's just considered hazmana, and it's not a hilka chafilu dochiyu meikara enkan ad shekadesh olav hayom. Therefore, meaning the parsha, the whole sugi doesn't begin until it's yantif.
Can you untie something on Yom Tov? Untie? So how are you able to?
What was it? We'll get to that.
fix
No, I just took off the berries. Our case is you just took off berries.
Oh, you don't even need to untie it.
Yeah, that's the issue, that you didn't untie it. Now you have your hashana, your set was puzzle, and now you're making a kosher. Okay, so ein kana achikal shalav hayom va'idenu bepsulay. So dichu meikar would mean that if Yom Tov came and it's still puzzle, then it would be a problem. Like even the matazman mitzvah, since the time to do the mitzvah came, and it wasn't fit to do the mitzvah, mikri dachui. That's called pushed off the mitzvah. But anything that happened before Yom Tov starts is lav dachuyu. That's not called dichui. Okay, so therefore, since this case, you weren't mamayid on Yom Tov. You were mamayid before Yom Tov. The issue was it was already tied. You made your hashana already. It was already tied up. So you thought that maybe this is it was puzzle and I'm kashering. Like the whole sugi doesn't start until Yom Tov starts. If Yom Tov starts and it's puzzle, that's dichum meikara. If Yom Tov started and it was kosher, then it was nearer v'nitcha. Okay. Says the Gemara. So you're not allowed to. If you have too many berries, you can't take off the berries in Yom Tov. However, reluctant, what happens if you did? What is kosher? So Mar says the ashchur emas. Well, when did these berries turn black? Right? As long as they weren't black, it was kosher. So it had to turn black. So when did that happen? Ilema the ashchur me'etmol. So if it turned black on erev Yom Tov, then dichu meikaru. So then this would be another example of dichu meikara, because here you actually did it on Yom Tov. Right, I took it off on Yom Tov, so it's mamish dichu meikara. So dichu meikara delay have dichu. I'm sorry. Yeah, so tishmin dichu meikara delay have dichu. So I could bring a raya from this halacha that dichu meikara, if something was never kosher and it's only becoming kosher for the first time on Yom Tov, that's okay. Elalav the ashkar b'yom tov. So elamai it became dark, the berry it became a puzzle hadas on Yom Tov itself. So then nira v'nitchahu. So then it's a scenario which is much worse, which that was kosher and then became puzzle on Yom Tov. So shmat mina nira v'nitchahu chayza v'nira. So I have a riot from this halacha that if it was nira, if it was kosher, and then it was nitcha, it became puzzle, and now it became kosher again, that's okay. Or says like, I'd rather not bring that right. That's a bigger chiddush. La'olam da ashka meikara and dichui meikara delay havi dichui tivshavinei, and bring me a raya that dichui meikara is not considered a dichui. Aval nir v'nitcha v'chayzer v'nir le tivshav. But you can't answer that. So meaning, I have to learn one of them. It's got to be one of those two cases. It's either got to be a case of dichui meikara or a case of nir v'nitcha. So Mara says, I'd rather keep to the smaller chiddush, which is dichu meikara, as opposed to the bigger chiddush which would be near the nitcha. Okay. Zok tomorrow vayit. Ton rabbanon ein mematin b'yom tov. You're not allowed to be made on Yom Tov. Mishum Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon Amru mematin. You're allowed to be. Okay. Fact the Gemara of metakin mana b'yom tov, but you're fixing something on Yom Tov. Now the Gemara sounds like it's a deraisa in the taken mana, like Imam is making a kli, but Rashi before said that it's only derabbanan. It's nearer to the taken mana. It looks like you're fixing it. Where was that Rashi? He said it somewhere. I don't remember.
He's pulling off the berries.
Yes. Okay, so it's the derabbanan we're dealing with over here. Okay.
And to be tikkun for a mitzvah is not a.
So let's see. We'll get to that. We'll get to it. In fact, tomorrow Yom Tov, are you fixing it on Yom Tov? So I'm Rav Ashi. Rav Ashi says, we're talking about a case where you picked it off to eat. You weren't interested in fixing your hadassim. You were hungry. You wanted a berry. Okay. So what? So that's called a dover. It's tolish. That's fine. You're picking it. The problem is you're fixing your hadas. You're making your hadassim kosher. So that's called the dover she'ein mischaven. I'm doing one action that has two results. One I'm mechaven for, and one I'm not. I'm mechaven for the achila. I want to eat the berry. I'm not mechaven for the tikkun mana. So that's the dover she'ein mischaven. Rebbe Elazar, Rebbe Shimon, Sarvala Kavua. Rebbe Elazar, the son of Rebbe Shimon, holds like his father, and Rebbe Shimon holds dover she'ein mischaven mutter. Dover she'ein mischaven is mutter to do. Okay, very nice. Kishmak. 1 second, not so fast. Abai and Rava both said that Moide Reb Shimon b'psek reishay v'lo yamos. Reb Shimon is Moide. I'll tell you what that means, and I'll tell you why the phrase means that. But Reb Shimon agrees that anytime it's for sure going to happen, anytime even the result which you're not intending on is if it's for sure going to happen, then it's kilu mischaven. It's like you were mechaven for that too. If it's a psik reisha, it means if it's for sure going to happen, then we'll get to that. 1 second. We'll get to it. There's no such phrase in Shas.
The nichalei.
Yeah, no such thing. That's in the Rishonim.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, as far as I know. I know it's definitely that I don't know if the psik reisha, the nichalei lo nichalei, I don't think is a phrase that I don't think so. It's a psik reisha.
How can a reason then come and be matir?
Well, we'll see. We'll get to it. We're going to get to it. I hope we'll get to it. So the Gemara says they agree that if it's a psik reisha, which means it's for sure going to happen, then you are good. That's considered that you're being mechaven. So and therefore you won't be allowed to do that. So we're talking over here the Isla Hashan Achriti. You have another Hashan. So I don't need this one. So if I don't need it, then I'm not fixing anything.
You're just eating your berries.
I'm just eating berries. Happens to be that it's becoming kosher. But it's not something that it's totally not necessary. We're going to read Rashi 1 second. I just wanted to discuss, I want to tell you what the phrase psik reisha v'lo is, where it comes from. Psik reisha v'lo means you cut off the head and it doesn't die.
It runs around. The
right?
chicken runs around, yeah.
But psik reisha, you're going to cut off the head v'lo and it's not going to die. They were discussing. You want to give your kid a toy to play with. So what kind of toy you give him? Try this one, Shimon. All right? Bring home a little chicken and give him a chicken to play with. Now, you don't want the chicken you can't give him a live chicken because how's he going to play with a live chicken? It's running around, right? So you want to chop up the head and then give him something to play with. So you say it's a davar she'ein mischaven. I have no intent on killing the animal. I don't care about killing it. All I want is that he should have something to play with, right? So it's about by cutting off the head, you're for sure going to kill. That's the lashon psik reisha v'lo yamos. Are you going to cut off the head and it's not going to die? So that became the phrase to mean that something's for sure going to happen. So you don't have the heter of psik reisha if something's for sure going to happen. You only have the heter of davar she'ein mischaven if you're the thing that you're not intending to do won't necessarily happen. So the classic example is if you're dragging a bench on the on the dirt and you're making a chritz, making a furrow, right? And you're planning on planting, right? So I'll give you, that's probably a davar she'ein mischaven though. I remember that they were discussing I'll say it after we finish recording. Okay.
In this very last case, though, situation with the lady because you have another one.
Oh, so that's exactly. This is where Taisus over here does not discuss this. This is Taisus in Shabbos brings this Gemara and talks about psik reisha v'lo nichalei, and that's how he learns this Gemara.
But it's still usher.
No, here it would be mutter.
Mutter.
Mutter. Mutter.
It's mutter, the whole
According
nichalei?
to the it, we don't pass it like that. I think it's a bal iter holds that psikration l'nichalei is mutter.
Uh-huh.
Is mutter. That's why, yeah. Here, that's not how Taisus learns this over here. Taisus over here learns the reason why. Taisus says that the teretz, if you look about 6-7 lines down from before the end of Taisus, from the end up from the bottom of Taisus, Taisus says right after it says Shabbos daf ayin hayim bar aleph. Taisus says v'chein hada mishani hacha the isla yashani yisera haynu misham the az havi malacha she'en etzricha legufa. Taisus holds that this remains. It's a davar she'en mischav, and he holds that over here. It's davar she'en mischav doesn't help you, and he just holds that it becomes of you don't need it, or if I don't want it, so then it's a malacha she'en tzrich legufa. I'm not doing it for the purpose of the malacha, because I'm doing it for a different purpose. So it's a malacha she'en tzrich legufa, which normally is pater aval aser. But avagav that feel Reb Shimon pater aval aser hachasher mishum mitzvah. Here be mutter because of a mitzvah, which is a little backwards because you don't need it.
So what's the malacha here of picking up a berry from a branch? That's
Would be tikkun.
only tikkun.
Tikkun mana.
So how do you say malacha shricha legufa by Besak and a kli? What is the malacha? Like what is the malacha shricha legufa by Besak?
If I want it, I'm doing the malacha for the purpose that Taisus holds. Malacha shricha legufa is a malacha that you do want to do it the way it was done in the Mishkan.
Right. So what is it there by Besak?
A regular takana, you fix something because you need it.
Anything at all?
Yeah, anything you fix it because you want to fix it.
Usually we say it's very narrow. It's a very narrow purpose, right?
I don't know. But Rashi over here learns Rashi holds it that because Rashi brings it at the end. So it's in the whole Rashi Pirish Bekuntris Pirish Kan the Chi Islay Haishana Achriti Ein Kan Tikun Kli. He holds since I have it's Bechal not Tikun. There's no Tikun Bechlal, and therefore the Chayra, according to Rashi, we're not going back to. We're not discussing. It's not going. We don't need. It's not a. You don't have to come on to that. You're doing it lachila. Doesn't make a difference. If I have another one, there's no tikkun b'chlal. Right. So that depends how you're going to learn this sugya. Is Haishana Achriti going is like just an answer to explain why here it's not a psikresha or it's a malach she'en tzrich legufa, why over here it's going to be mutter. According to Taisus, it's remaining malach she'en tzrich legufa, and we're just saying that it's mutter to do because it's a mitzvah, or is this like a brand new teretz? We're going back to the original kasha. Why are you allowed to do this? And then now we're answering because you have another one, so there's no tikkun mana b'chlal. Okay, let's go one more. Gemara Tanabanan Huter Agdai B'Yomtiv. What happens if your knot got undone? It got unbound on Yom Tiv. So Gemara says, so then just tie it like you would tie up a bunch of vegetables, right? Which means you wind it up, right? And then you tuck it in. You wind it up and you tuck it in. That's a kricha. It's called. Yeah. It's fact the Gemara why don't you just make a bow instead of making a knot? Make a bow. Bows are okay. Gemara says Hamayni Rabbi Yehudi. Because this is Rabbi Yehuda, the Amar Niva Kashir Ma'alisi. Rabbi Yehuda in Shabbos holds that a bow is also a knot, so that doesn't help you any.
But the knot had to be a professional knot.
Kesher Shal Kayama. Rabbi Yehuda holds that a bow is also. That is good kasha. Why does he say that? I don't remember. Yeah, I don't know. Rabbi Yehuda holds that a bow. See, it's really a knot, whatever. But it's every bow is a knot with a bow on top of it, right? When you do one, that's called a knot.
That's a knot.
Yeah, it's not a kesher shel kayama. It's not going to last.
No,
right? And it'll come out, but that's called a kesher, right? You need it to be on Shabbos. I do a kesher to be chayv. Do a kesher al gabe kesher. That's how it's referred. And then he holds that a niva al gabe kesher is also no good. So a bow on top. So frankly, Mark, 1 second. Rabbi Yehuda, Eger Ma'alisa Bayi. But if this Tana is Rabbi Yehuda, and you tell me the reason why I'm not doing a bow is because this Tana is Rabbi Yehuda, And that's why I'm doing a kricha. I'm just wrapping it around. Rabbi Yehuda holds you need eged is ma'akev. You can't just wrap it around. You need to tie it. You need a knot. Where it says, "Haytana sarvalakav say bechada upalgale bechada." So this Tana agrees with Rabbi Yehuda that aniva is no good, but he does not agree with Rabbi Yehuda that you need eged on your lulav, and therefore doing kricha is good enough. All right, we will stop here.
So in other words, you could waive everything separately. If you don't need all good. Good.
It's the hardest stuff.
Well,
Yeah.
I'll tell you a funny thing.
Too much.
The shaila is, I was in Machon. I dealt with guys in Machon Yaakov, the yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael, and this guy became Baal Tshuva, and he was actually tried out for the Boston Red Sox in the middle of the year. He went back to the Boston Red Sox.
Oh boy.
And but then said they had no room for Shem Shabbos on the team, so he chose Yiddishkeit. Baruch Hashem, he stayed from. But I remember they were clearing in one of the rabbanim there. I forgot his name. Was trying to figure out what malacha de'iraisa would there be in playing being a pitcher on a baseball team
On Shabbat.
on Shabbos. What malacha de'iraisa? So I remember the one he came up with was charisha. Because what do pitchers do on the mound? Right? Always, they're always going like this, right? You're flattening out. You're mashra agumas. So I was just clearing that tonight. Are they doing? Is that what they're doing? Is that what they're mechaven to do?
Not at all.
What?
It's certainly not a malacha share. It's a malacha.
It could be they are. They need a flat area.
No, they're happy with that area. They when they first get up there, they start pitching. They right away start flatting it. You start moving. It's just a habit.
Nervous energy.
It's a habit.
It's never changed in Mischaven. Yeah. I don't know if that's a Misasik, that's Mischaven, or.
Do you need a lift?
You want to live?
Does anyone need to live here?
I have a car.
My car's across the street.
Oh, you have a car.
Shimon, good night.
I thought either Henry or William.
Where the lights are.
Yeah,
The
James
lights.
is in Israel.
That's it. Yeah, you're good. One more?
Some of them are going on.
Pretty good.
Put that one over there on the wall.
That one wasn't it?
Maybe he leaves these on at night. For security.
Yeah. Is there a number on this outside to get in?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Oh, they put it in ready?
No, regular. What's this here?
It's what? No, that used to be.
Camera, my doorbell.
William or Henry?
Yeah, James, I'm back there.
James is right here.
Here, he's coming right now. He's right here.
Let me see.
Yeah.
Good night, though. Window, this is summer revenue here.
Is that? That's summer revenue? No, that's the Shia look. The Shia look kind of steer.
Look upstairs.
Oh, wait. Like, you're over right there? She turned up all of them except this one. I don't know how to get off. Where you go? Okay.
How does this go up?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Okay. Yeah. No, Linda wants to lock the door. He doesn't start. All right, thank you. Yeah, back over here also.
What'd they say?
I was not share.
Oh,
I couldn't pick it up.
they left the message. I'm still in the Zoom meeting.